Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hutchinson City Council meeting for Tuesday, August 27th, 2019. Approve the council agenda and any agenda additions or corrections.
Mayor, I'm sorry. I don't have any additions or corrections, so.
Okay,
I'll second it.
it's going to be one of those nights, I can tell.
I think so.
Motion by Dave, second by Mary to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have no pastor here tonight, so we'll just have a moment of silence, please. Next is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Recognitions of gifts, donations, and community service to the city. Does anybody have anything tonight? All right, we do have a resolution underneath there. We have resolution number 15088, accepting donations from the Hutchinson Elk Lodge to the Hutchinson Police Department towards the purchase of a rescue phone to be used during negotiations. And, oh, go ahead, man, I'm
No, I
sorry.
was going to say, Mayor and Council, we had a generous donation from the Elks in the amount of $6,495 as they continue to bless this community, so.
And Chief Dickerson is here, and I asked him to maybe come up and say a few words about what this will be used for.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Our old rescue phone has been at the police department longer than I have. And it's one of those things that we've always meant to replace, and it just always kind of got pushed off and pushed off. Several members of the Elks approached the police department, asked if there was any needs that we had, and we thought this probably would fall right into that. Gave a brief presentation at one of their meetings, and they were generous enough to actually cover the entire cost of the unit. So again, I want to extend thanks to the Elks and just say that, you know, our community definitely benefits from organizations like theirs and them, of course. That's really about it. Oh, you wanted to know what it's going to be used for?
Yes.
I guess the slang term for it is a throw phone, that type of thing. If we, in situations where we end up with a barricaded subject or something like that, or, where it's not safe to approach, we would then get this phone into them and be able to communicate back and forth with that person to hopefully bring a safe resolution to whatever conflict may be going on at that time, so.
Well, something I have, but nice if you never use it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks.
But when you need it, it needs to work,
Yep,
so.
all right.
Okay.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Have a motion to accept the donation.
So moved.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to accept the donation. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Citizens addressing the council, please come forward and state your name and address.
I don't know if there's a particular order in which
No.
we were supposed to
Go ahead,
appear.
Bob.
Am I out of order?
No,
No.
name and address, please.
Bud Morrow, living up on 1278 Birdie Circle Northwest. First of all, I need to say thank you to you people for your community service. We all appreciate that. I have a constructive suggestion. Recent council actions regarding spending our money causes me to suggest that I am believing that I have some better ways to spend our money. Presently, we've found dollars for the relocation of our ball fields, 1.4 or 1.1 million, I believe, bonded for 5+ millions for our pool complex. Add to that $75,000 for a dog park and $38,000 for painting little white bicycles on our street, most of which have disappeared by this time. $750,000 for our hole under the highway. Most of these items benefit a limited number of people and probably relatively few taxpayers. My suggestion is, and it will benefit, I believe, a huge percentage of our population. Promoting Hutchinson is commendable. Selling Hutch probably will fall short of a real story. Our streets are in pathetic condition. Not only do we have broken blacktop, we have recessed manhole covers. You can see the area next to the Burger King. And that was a city project, I believe, that fell in, and it has been sinking and sitting there for a year plus. 7th Avenue, I don't know who fixed that or tried to fix it, but it was in deplorable condition for the better part of a year. Then someone came in and put some blacktop over the hole, as it was, and that began to settle. And finally, it's been repaired. There have been some efforts to patch, and it seems like it only makes matters worse. And if you disagree, I'll buy some scalding hot coffee at McDonald's and we can go for a ride. And you put that between your legs and we'll ride around town. When you meet someone, you probably notice their appearance. When you go into a community for the first time, you probably take note of the surroundings. When you're induced or introduced to a potential employer, you probably take note of the appearance of that industry or business. If you are visiting to Hutchinson, you probably have an appearance perception, whether it's the ballpark visit, or the citywide garage sale, Crazy Day promo, the Orange Spectacular, or the Monday Night Music. One would likely travel on one or more of our city streets. I know you can say it is the property owner's responsibility for the mall appearance. However, sit back and take a look at what visitors must think of Hutchinson if they have to travel through that mess. I haven't served on a city council before. I know there are ways of getting that done legally, and it may be a stretch for the city council to do that, but I think that's in order. We've lived here for 10 years, and I must say our appearance has slid dramatically. This is to say the least. I do not know where the fault lies. I suppose it starts with the priorities of this council, and then the administration would be next. Suggestion, give John Olson $1.1 million like the money was spent on the relocation of the ball fields, introducing a new West Nile virus pond, and bring a contractor in to mill and repair until the streets are first class, and then tell him, now, stay caught up. And if this is not enough money, then do this every year until these streets are in good condition. And I'm assuming that a product like what was put down on the main street here 2 years ago, maybe 2+ years ago, was holding quite well up until this year, especially with all that semi-traffic. So there's a product out there that can be used. Mill and lay down a mat would probably be in order for a lot of our streets. Do we have the dollars for it? With our current tax rate, there must be a lot of dollars available, and then show us that it can be done. The plan would benefit almost everyone, not just a limited few. I brought a pad and a pen for those of you that disagree with our street condition and would like a ride and coffee. Matt and I have had this discussion, and so I'm not trying to blindside anyone. I can't imagine what our streets would look like with the reroute traffic that John's going to have to put up with as you get this traffic around the main street here in town. I recall when School Road was used as a bypass around some bridge work, and that caused the demise of the School Road street. Now, I don't believe, and Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there were not an adequate number of dollars provided for the state replacement or repair of that street. So how you handle that, I don't know.
Bud, can you wrap it up? Your 5 minutes that are up.
You want me to come back next week?
That'd be fine.
I'll conclude by saying I don't think that I'm getting good service for my dollars. I can't imagine what our tax rate would be if we didn't have the 1.1 million or whatever the dollars are from the utilities and the liquor store. So it's up to this council to do the budgeting and look and see where those dollars come from. So how you spend it, that's your call. But I don't think we're getting good for our
Can
Thank you
I
for your comment.
just, Bud, can I share one thing with you? It's too bad you weren't here earlier because we were going through our 5-year capital improvement project lists, and a large part of that is streets and infrastructure. So we budget, 1.9 million just in bonding every year for that as part of a debt management plan. That doesn't count assessments and other funds that come into the street projects. That's typically about $2.5 million. And then there's other funds that get used for maintenance. So everything is being worked on, it's being looked at. We have a pavement management program that every year goes out and grades streets. Some of the things are done based on opportunities of grants and other funding that might be available. There's other things that maybe some roads are delayed because we've got other projects. You mentioned the stormwater pond. Well, now that's in. Now we have to add some of the larger pipes, stormwater pipes, that feed into that, and then after that, as part of that, then the roads get fixed. But it doesn't make sense to fix the roads now and then tear them up to put in the new pipes later on. So there is a lot of thought that goes into this, and I guess to sum it up, I also don't agree with our roads are the worst in the state. So
If I might address that angle of it, Darren did a good job and built a new school, and the city, I would assume, finished that street from the school on down around to the lake.
Mm-hmm.
But the last 2 blocks, or the first 2 blocks, if you will, those,
of Roberts Road,
yes,
that's on the project list that we just talked about, 5
Okay.
years, so
so that's, will be
2
in
more
the-
years, right? I think 2 years. Yeah,
Okay.
so,
There's light at the end of the tunnel for that,
yeah,
for that street?
yes, sir. Thanks for coming.
Anyone else? Name and address, please.
Carl Holmberg, 1108 Hennepin Avenue North, Glencoe. I'm a member of the board of the Greener Pastures Natural Foods Co-op, and we've been a tenant at 8 Main Street North since February. And I want to speak in favor of the economic development grant relating to signage in front of our store that faces Main Street. We have looked at various designs, and we especially like a design that uses the same material, an acrylic material that's in front of the Hutchinson Police Services Building.
You're mentioning a grant for signage?
Yes. Is grant not the correct word to use?
Well, this isn't the right place, right? Would this be an economic development?
It would be EDA.
EDA grant? And this Miles
Okay.
Seppelt is our EDA director.
Okay.
Yep, and just to clarify, I mean, the EDA board, we did approve a $1,000 grant from the Sign and On Grant Program for greener pastures, so I don't know if you guys already got the check or not, but that should be in the pipeline if you haven't received it already.
I talked with Maddie, and she said it was going out tomorrow.
Very good.
But just thought I'd come in and
So
thank you for
can you
your support in any case.
Can you explain a little bit about the service that you do?
Well, we think that Hutchinson people would like to have a co-op in town where it's owned by the members, and we have about 80 members right now that we've attracted through advertising, I suppose you'd say, on Facebook, and also word of mouth. And the landlord there at 8 Main Street North has been very cooperative with us. And this was the property that used to be Elena's Bakery. And even though we intended to take our baby steps as a co-op in Glencoe, when we saw that area or that building had become available because she closed down her bakery, we thought, well, we'd better grab this before somebody else does. And we've been there since February, and we're trying to meet the needs of the community in terms of nutrition, and also in terms of doing business with local producers, and both local and organic producers of foods. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for your
All right.
attention.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, approval of minutes. We have the regular meeting minutes of August 13th, 2019.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Consent agenda will be done by one motion unless somebody pulls something off for discussion. Approval of amending board commission calendar for the library board meetings. B is approval of change order number 1, letting number 5, project number 19-06, Technology Drive and West Highland Park Drive. C is approval for development of agreement with Silver Lake Capital Partners. D is approval of resolution number 15089, resolution adopting finding of fact and reason for approval of variance application to construct the addition at 700 Shady Ridge Road Northwest with favorable planning commission recommendation. E is approval of acknowledgement, consent, and separation agreement with Highfield Apartments and Wing Financial Credit Union. F is approval of depositing state DMV one-time monies of $72,194 into the capital project fund for DMV upgrade and other future city needs. G is approval of issuing short-term gambling license to the Faith Lutheran Church from September 8th through November 30th, 2019. H is claims appropriation and contract payments, Register A. Is there anything that anybody wants pulled off?
I was just curious about C. Quick question.
All right,
Make a motion to approve the balance.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to approve the balance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Steve, C.
Yeah. Just curious what the length of time is on that. I was trying to look through it.
The length of time?
Yeah, this, this would be with Warrior, is that Silver Lake or not?
Right, yep, that's Warrior Manufacturing, yes, yep.
So,
Yep, and what it is basically, I mean, Silver Lake Capital Partners, that's the company that kind of owns Warrior Manufacturing. Last winter, we set up an economic development TIF district to help Warrior Manufacturing with soil corrections that needed to happen on their site for their expansion. That district, it's an it's an 8-year economic development TIF district. So is that the question?
yep, that's what I
Okay.
was trying to look for it in here and didn't see it, but that was the other part of it from
Okay.
before. So, thank you.
You bet.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, second by Mary to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Claims and appropriations and contract payments, Register B. I have a check on there for my business, and so does Chad, so we'll both be abstaining.
I'll make a motion to approve with, with Chad and the mayor abstaining.
I'll second.
Mine's for a whopping $35, so this is pretty high
Ooh,
stakes
big
stuff.
time.
He was really worried though, because he called me thinking Mary was gonna be gone tonight,
Yeah.
wondering how he was gonna.
Really sweating it.
Motion by Mary, second by Steve to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We do not have a public hearing. Communications, requests, and petitions. We have the Hutchinson Center for the Arts update. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good. You got a bunch of art for us tonight?
I have just a little brown one.
All pictures, right, Lisa?
There is a lot of pictures. How do I get to the right one?
Is it up there?
I don't see it up there.
I don't see it up there.
I had emailed it. Yeah, I didn't realize you needed. Oh, yeah. Well, that's gonna take a while. Yeah, it's in their packet? Yes. Can I look at a packet and then, so that I'm like, no, like, so,
There's one over,
that's fine. So then I can at least know where I'm gonna land. I'm Lisa Bird, by the way, I'm the secretary of the Art Center. In case we-
It's two-sided,
That's fine.
but you want to use this to show when you need papers?
Oh, well, they have it, they have it.
But
that's good for the,
That's true. And I thought it was gonna go really fast since there was, so, but I'll still, I won't take up too much time. I'm just here, it's my annual update, it's my time to say thank you for investing in the arts, and I just wanna talk a little bit tonight about that return on your investment, and then some of the programming we've been up to. I always like to start with just a reminder of what we do, in case sometimes you forget. So the Art Center was founded about 10 years ago with this premise of collaboration and sharing. So we do a lot of things that are maybe unseen by the community, but that's through supporting our partner groups. And so we provide things like storage, liability insurance, we sell tickets, we serve as a fiscal sponsor for those that don't have their own 501c3. We have meetings, we're a place to have meetings. We are a post office box, so folks can get their mail. So I think that's really beneficial if you, I think that most of our partners, Minnesota Pottery Festival sort of has a brick and mortar, but not really because they're, they're separate. But they're all volunteer run, there's not staff, so if Joe is on the board and moves to Florida and he had all this stuff in his garage, where does that stuff go? So it's a pretty important element of what we do. And then we like to just, we're proud that we're an incubator for the arts, and we help people that want to start a new arts and culture group to be able to do that. I want to talk a little bit about arts tourism. At the Art Center, we're really committed to being part of an arts economy, and I always want to highlight the visitors we get. Now, this is just for the Art Center. And what I did before I came here is I went through our visual arts. We have a guest book where people can sign in. It's completely voluntary. So since January, these are where visitors have volunteered their location of where they're at. So we're getting a really good reach regionally and as well nationally. We've had visitors from those 6 places that have signed in. Thing to point out is if you come here from maybe more than 15 miles away, you're not just going to come to the Art Center and leave. You're probably going to shop, get a drink, have some lunch. So there's some real impact there. You're going to do I know that people, the most common things where I send people is arts activities. So they go on the sculpture path. They go up to Clay Coyote. They go up and down Main Street. So those are the things they're doing. This is, well, I brought this because I can't see that. So a couple years ago, the Minnesota Citizens for the Arts did a study on the economic impact of the arts and culture in this community. And I just want to point out a couple numbers. And one is that the total spent by nonprofit arts and culture organizations in the city is $1 million annually. And then artists and cultural attendees in the city spend 1.2. So the impact on the arts is 2.2 economically each year. There's another number that is state and local revenues. So we bring in over $215,000 in fees and taxes every year in terms of arts and culture and organizations. So I just want to point out that that's a real impact. And I think sometimes in arts we'll talk about the feel-good stuff, but I just want you to, we realize there's an economic impact and we're proud to be a part of it. And I think it's also the number, it's like 60,000, let me see if I can find it on here, that each year, do you know, Morgan, off the top of your head?
I don't know where you're going.
No? It's like, right here.
Attendance.
Arts and culture organizations, almost 62,000 attendees annually. So there's a lot of people coming to town for the arts. We spend a lot of time collaborating. The thing to remember is all our partner groups are completely autonomous. They do their own programming, and then the Art Center has their own programming as well. So some of the things some of the groups we've worked with this year, Woodstone, Hutchinson Schools, that's private, public, and home schools, the library, County Historical Society, and United Way, Zamia Theater, Place-Based Productions, Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. So we're in August, so that's what we've done so far. And now I've got the pictures, and they're not as cute in black and white. But they'll talk a little bit about what these programs look like. So one of our most popular activities is our annual youth art exhibition. And that we see, it's too hard for me to even count. I think at least a couple hundred people come in 3-hour block of time. And so it's the public schools, it's the private schools, and it's homeschool kids all come in and get to hang their art up, have a professional exhibition. We do make and take activities. I would say it's really incredible community. For one kid, they get like 3 to 5 adults to come. They get an uncle, they get a grandma, they get a grandpa, they get a cousin. So it's quite popular. The last thing we just did a couple weeks ago, this was a partnership with Zamia Theater, which is a theater company out of the city, Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership and Place-Based Production. They created a production called Prairie Homeless Companion. We also worked with United Way and helps with promoting that. And the Zamia Theater is a professional theater troupe that uses theater to educate on issues of homelessness. Specifically for this production, they were focusing on rural homelessness. We were anticipating, because they had done shows in Wilmer and Worthington and Marshall, and based on Wilmer, they were like, oh, we had about 50 people. I was like, oh, okay, we'll put about 50 chairs. People kept coming and coming. I don't think the fire marshal's here, but we used every chair. There was easily over 100, and then there was a talk back afterwards, and I would say that 85% of the people stayed for the talk back too. So it was a really powerful piece, and we were proud to be able to do that. Then we have our youth programs. That includes, we do programs during the school year, and we also do summer studio. We provide tuition support to transportation vouchers. We make sure every kid that wants to come can come. Currently, 10% of our participants get full or partial support for tuition and the transportation vouchers. That's a really important thing, because you can give someone free tuition, but if they can't get there, so we make sure that they have a bus token to get there. We have been able to adapt all our classes to serve the physical and cognitive needs of our students. That's part of it is because we have trained artists and teaching artists teaching the classes. So we often, I would say, in the summer classes, we have 3 to 5 kids on the spectrum on those classes. We always have someone with some sort of physical disability, and we're able to make that work for them. I saw this little, when I was preparing my PowerPoint for you, I saw on Instagram some snarky artist said emotional intelligence and critical thinking are attractive personality traits. And I thought, I'm going to put that in my PowerPoint. Because I don't think they're not only attractive, they're necessary, and it's what we all want. And so I think that when we think about our classes, they're really structured. They're about artistic thinking and learning and really diving in and figuring out the problems yourself. So this summer we did an art and machine class where all the kids had to make their own machines that made a mark or something like that, or paint. They all did really well. They all got really frustrated. They all failed like 3 times and had to restart every time, but they all left with a machine that made a mark. And so that's the kind of thing that's happening. And these kids right here, I think they're like 1st, 2nd grade, they made their own videos. So the kids are really learning, like they're having fun, they're learning creative tools and all of that, but they're also, this idea of emotional intelligence, grit, I think is what's really happening with our programs. We get about 100 kids that participate in the after-school art club and summer studio annually. We're pretty much at max or at capacity. We keep the classes about 10 to 15 so they have a real connection with the instructor. Also, we're doing really messy material, tool-based stuff. So we can't have 30 kids in there, all using the tools, so that's part of it. So this is kids made their own masks from nothing. Another program is our popular Art Kids Drop-In Day. That's a monthly program that's for preschoolers and their families. It was built on this idea of building social skills and communications through art and play. It was originally funded from SWIFT. We get about 120 participants annually. It can really shift depending on the time of year. Sometimes there's 6 kids, sometimes there's 20 or 30. All of the activities have a really important physical element. You can see some of the, that one up there, they were human spirographs. There they're just painting really large. We make intention to make kids be able to work really large. Often small children have to work on a coloring page. So most activities are designed to be very large in scale and physical and lots of play. We've done things like rip up toilet paper to make snow. The tape wall remains the favorite. So 3M gives us a bunch of tape and it's the favorite all year round. So that's always up. And kids of all ages work on that tape wall. And we just take the tape off every few months and it gets started over. A newer program that started last year is Palette. It's a creative engagement for seniors. It was founded with a grant from the Birch Foundation. And then we had a community foundation grant this year, and we're working with Woodstone, and we're doing quarterly projects. We've really allowed the residents of Woodstone to kind of determine what they want to do, and a lot of them really want to do music. This project was a really successful one. Tom Work came in and did a multi-day workshop or had them make pinch pots. And the experience of having something that happened this week and then next week and then a 3rd week was really profound. And the one anecdotal thing I'll say is they never want me to take pictures of them. But when we did this, they all said, Lisa, take my picture. So it's been really helpful. They've been singing quarterly, and I want to, again, it's not just singing. They're really learning about music. They're learning musical instruments, reading music, harmony. Hope to have a concert at the end of the year. It's been good. It's a growth place we want to work on. And then we also do quarterly adult art craft workshops for adults. This was a macrame class, remember from the 70s? Full. We're going to do a macrame bracelet one coming up. We just did a mosaic class in conjunction with the Mosaic Guild exhibit we had. That was really successful too. Our visual arts exhibition series, that's where all those people are coming from other places to pop into the art center. So we do about 7 exhibits a year. This year we have 30 artists. That's a little high. It's misleading partly because we had the Minnesota Mosaic Guild. So that was a guild of like, I think 15 to 20 different artists were in that. We have artists from, this year we're representing artists from Hutchinson, Minneapolis, Shoreview, the greater metro area, Glencoe and Duluth. All career stages, so it's emerging to professional career artists. And we are showing everything from ceramics, woodworking, sculpture, textile arts, painting, stained glass, mosaic, and installation. The real mission of the series is to show as much variety as we can in terms of material and artistic voice. How we get our money, I thought would be a good reminder. You're all invited to a cocktail party on September 23rd. That would be an individual donation. We get some private facility rentals, so we spend a lot of time using our space for private facility rentals. Just had a wedding rehearsal on Friday. We're gonna have a couple of business meetings in the next couple weeks. We have a bridal shower on Saturday, so that's sort of how we drum up some business. We have a gift shop and gallery sales. The Mosaic Guild, I think about 6 pieces sold out of that. And 70% goes to the artists, 30% goes to us. Annual night for the arts, classes and workshops. Our contributor revenue is the City of Hutchinson, Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, McKnight Foundation. We're just wrapping up a big 2-year grant. Other foundations, corporate business, and individual donors. The one thing I'll say is, again, thank you for your support. When I'm out with peers, industry peers at convention meetings, they're always really impressed that the city recognizes the investments making in the arts. And that McKnight Foundation, part of the reason we got that grant was because the city supported us. So it's really important, and thank you. Any questions? Sorry it wasn't colorful.
Very busy year.
Huh?
Very busy year.
We keep busy. We keep busy for sure.
Yes, and you have a good impact on our community.
Thank you, Mary. You do too.
Thanks to the board, too.
Yes, we have a good board.
Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business. Second reading and adoption of ordinance number 19-803, the ordinance repealing chapter 34 of the Hutchinson City Code, Finance and Taxation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. As was mentioned, this is the second reading of this ordinance. As you might recall from the last meeting, we talked about how the state law has changed to better capture revenue from out-of-state and online retailers. And they recommended that cities that have city sales taxes change their ordinances to help them facilitate these state law changes. No changes in our proposed ordinance have been made since the last meeting, and consequently, I'd ask you to approve the second reading.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second. Just say I ordered a book online from Washington, and it had ours on there. So
Oh,
it was
good.
included, so.
Nice.
Motion by Chad, second by Steve to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. We have second reading and adoption of ordinance number 19-804. Ordinance suspending enforcement of section 92.018 of the city code pertaining to hours of construction during the South Grade Road reconstruction project.
Very good. Second reading, likewise, and no revisions, as same as presented last council meeting. Simple exception to our noise ordinance, extending working hours from 9 a.m. on Saturday mornings to 7 a.m. for the South Grade Road project.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 19-804.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Dave to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Under new business, resolution number 15087, declaring intent on bonding reimbursements.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. As you know, this is a resolution we have to pass each year as part of our bonding process. The way we handle our annual street projects is we get underway May of June, and then we look to bond for those project costs in the fall. We're actually going to be starting that process at next council meeting. Ellers is going to be out here to start that process. But what we need to satisfy the IRS is to declare our intent to reimburse ourselves with those bonding dollars, and that's what's in front of you tonight. It's essentially just housekeeping that we do every year to appease the IRS. So just asking for you to approve this resolution tonight. Thank you.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Business loan to Zephyr Wind Services LLC. Mr. Miles.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, tonight I'm going to share a little bit about a newer business we have in town, Zephyr Wind Services, and then we're seeking authorization to move ahead with a loan to the company that they're going to use for the purchase of equipment. So briefly, Zephyr Wind Services came to us, I think we first learned about it, I'm going to say maybe 5-6 months ago. They had approached us and wanted to see the former New Crane building on Highway 7 West. So we arranged a tour, and one thing led to another, and now they're in Hutchinson. So Zephyr Wind Services, it's a company that works in the wind industry. What they do is they repair the wind generators on wind towers, the electrical generators on the wind towers. You can see on this diagram on the right at the very back of the nacelle of the wind tower, that's where the generator is, that's where the electricity is generated. And so that's primarily what Zephyr will be servicing. And the way that this is going to work is that the owners of the wind towers, they will have the generators removed, put on a truck, they'll be shipped here to Hutchinson where they would be refurbished or repaired or whatever needs to happen. And then at the same time, Zephyr Wind Services is going to keep an inventory of these generators on site so that they could load one up and send out a replacement within really hours. So this is going to be a big advance in the industry, because the way that it works now is that oftentimes they take the generator down, they send it out to get it repaired. That's a process that could take many weeks or many months. But what Zephyr's going to do is they'll have an inventory of these on site, so that theoretically the wind tower could be up and operational again really in a matter of a few hours. You know, it could be 24 hours or a couple of days. So it's going to be a really a neat service. And then along those same lines, Zephyr will have storage space for spares that wind companies will be able to rent space from them. And then they'll also have replacement parts there on site as well. So an interesting wind energy company that we think has a lot of upside potential. The owner of it is a fellow by the name of Trevor Armstrong. He's been in the industry basically for 25 years. He himself is a master electrician. He's got a bachelor's in industrial engineering and an MBA from Colorado State University. And he and his family used to be an owner of a company which was sold 5 years ago. So during that time, he decided he kind of wanted to get back into the industry, and so that's where Zephyr Wind Services is really coming from. So basically what's going to happen is we would, well, I should skip ahead here for a moment here. Basically the funding for this is just going to go for equipment. So Southwest Initiative Foundation has already authorized a loan for $300,000 for equipment for Zephyr, and then the EDA would be kicking in $100,000. This would be a 7-year loan at a 4% interest rate, again, for the purchase of equipment. So basically what the company would do, they would commit to create at least 5 full-time jobs within 2 years. I think realistically, it's going to be quite a bit more than that. And then in line with the city's business subsidy policy, they have to pay a minimum wage of at least equal to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services poverty level for a family of 4. So right now, that's $12.38. That's the minimum. I think realistically, it's going to be quite a bit more. You know, what the company's projecting is that in 4 or 5 years, there could be 40 or 50 people working out there. I mean, this could get really big. And what the ownership is telling me, they see wages probably more in the realm of $25 an hour would be probably more the average, because these are highly technical jobs in repairing these generators. So we think it's going to be a great addition to Hutchinson. We're excited to see this building back in circulation and have a neat new company here in Hutchinson. So basically what we're requesting tonight is just authorization for this loan to go ahead. Again, it would be $100,000 for 7 years at a fixed interest rate of 4%. The money would come from the Economic Development Loan Fund. And then the second part of it would be just authorization for city staff to sign documents and get the loan dispersed. So this was carefully reviewed by the finance team of the Economic Development Authority, and then the EDA board also approved or is recommending approval of the loan. So we did a full credit check and went through all the due diligence, and we're comfortable that this is going to be a good deal for the city of Hutchinson. Any questions?
Are they doing work now?
They are operational right now. They've been kind of a slow speed up, I guess. I mean, they've been operating basically since July, a little bit, and then just busy getting the building set up and getting operations set up. They're going to have an open house ribbon cutting thing on October 1st, to which you're all invited. And I think then that'll be the opportunity to really see the facility, and I think they'll really be hitting their stride by then. So,
What did they like about the tall ceilings?
well, what they were in love with was the cranes. There's a set of really high capacity cranes in that building. And for doing things like, I'll show you the picture here. You can see this here, semi came in, a flatbed with a bunch of generators on top. For picking those up and setting them on the floor in different places, it was just an ideal setup. So they love that. They like the fact that it's got plenty of floor space, because a chunk of that's going to be dedicated just for the storage of replacement generators, so they can do this quick turnaround. And then there'll be another section of it that'll be set up as sort of a clean room. That's where they'll take the generators in, disassemble, repair, do whatever they need to do, put them back together, get everything calibrated and tested, get them ready to ship out again. So I mean, the building just, it was a lucky break. I mean, it was just a great fit for what they wanted to do.
Great.
Any other questions?
What time was that going to be, Miles?
Oh, I will have to get back to you on the
Okay.
open house. Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that. I can't remember if it was like 9 or 10 or something like that, 10 to noon or 10 to 1 or something, but I'll let you guys know.
All right, thank you. Have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thanks,
All right,
Miles.
thank you very much.
City Marketing and Branding Initiative.
Mayor and council, this project actually originally stems from our strategic planning session that took place just over a year and a half ago, where we talked about an effort to try to promote the community in a greater level. And council authorized an RFP back this past spring. And much to my surprise, we had 19 companies that were interested in coming and doing work for us, which kind of blew me away. And from that 19, we ended up selecting 4 finalists to come in and do an interview with us. I know both Mary and Steve were a part of that interview panel, along with Miles and Mary Hudson from the chamber. And really what this project is looking to do is to help tell the story of Hutchinson. I think we all agree this is a great community to live in. We're very much proud of everything that we have to offer. And as we continue to try to meet workforce needs and other needs within the community, we feel this is a great opportunity to help tell our story, to help recruit young families to this community, or quite frankly, families of all ages and backgrounds, to really help meet the needs of the community. We see this as an economic development opportunity, and just more importantly, an opportunity to put a stamp on who Hutchinson is, to attract more people to the town. I know there's been some conversation. It's way more than a simple update of our logo. That's a minor portion of what we're looking to do. And so, with that being said, I know the committee that was put together to look at it would encourage and recommend that the council move forward with this project. Answer any questions? May have. I know Mayor and Steve were a part of the process as well.
So, I'm surprised that there was that many people interested.
So were we.
And you see the number of communities that are actually doing it too, and I found some stuff online just from some of the projects that company that we've chosen and that were just done recently, like 2017, and they had good feedback just on this 2 articles I found from 2 different communities, so there's a benefit to it.
I think it was much to our surprise to find out how many communities are actually doing this. I think part of that plays into the ever-competitive world that we live in and the global society that we live in. And I think communities realizing that, Hutchinson's competing just like Wilmer and St. Cloud and Minneapolis and St. Paul, and anything that we can do to try to attract people here is beneficial. And this is one of those tools that's been made available to us. So.
I think the other thing we all were impressed on and happy to see, I mean, it's just not cookie cutter stuff. They really try to understand the community by talking to people inside and outside the community, and come up with really the identity and the story of the community. And they work with that then into everything that they put together for us and work with us.
Like they said, branding tells a story and it'll equal success. So, and the 4 that we ended up with were good. Yeah.
I'm just glad we didn't do an 18. So.
We have a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
I will second that.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Right, ordinance number 19-806, ordinance revising chapter 111, peddlers and solicitors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. As you recall from the last meeting that we had Dan Hart from the brewery here to talk about some concerns he had with regard to both our transient merchant ordinance and our food vendor ordinance here in town. And he asked the council perhaps to think about ways to perhaps make changes to those ordinances so that he could have some additional events at his business. And he had also expressed some concerns about maybe making both of those ordinances more flexible so it would benefit the community as a whole. Matt led a really good discussion as part of that meeting, talking about the difficulties that city staff has to try to accommodate those requests, and at the end of the meeting we more or less had the consensus of let's try to make some changes to both of those ordinances to accommodate the two things that I think were most brought out were how can we accommodate multi-vendor events, and how can we maybe make our licensing process a little more flexible. And included in your packet were two draft ordinances for you to take a look at that hopefully will accomplish both of those goals, as well as try to address some lapses in consistency between those two ordinances. And I'd like to take this opportunity to go through those, point out what the proposed changes to those ordinances are, and certainly answer any questions that you might have regarding them. So I think the first one that's in the council packet is the transient merchant license. And so I will go through those changes first. So as I mentioned, this is the transient merchant license, and in our current ordinance, we do not have the ability to issue temporary licenses or issue what I'm calling in this multi-vendor sponsored event licenses to try to address the concerns that Mr. Hart had brought up before the council. So in this proposed ordinance, there would be three types of licenses available to transient merchants. An annual license, temporary license, and that would be a license that would be issued for a single day to an applicant for a maximum of 4 times per year. And then in section C, this multi-vendor sponsored event license would be an opportunity for someone to make an application from the city to have several transient merchants or food vendors at an event that they themselves would be sponsoring, and they would be therefore taking on the responsibility for that event. Steve, did you have a question or?
Yeah, I guess on the temporary license, so if somebody wanted to be here like for Friday, Saturday, they would actually need 2 licenses.
Correct.
And I just wondered, why not make it like a 2-day license? You know, that way they have that option without having to put in 2 different applications, 2 different fees. So it was just one thought I had, and have some other things tied to that. But
Sure. And there's nothing that's set in stone about
Yeah,
having 1 day or 2 day or 3 day. That's one of the things that city staff wrestled with is how do we make both the temporary license and the annual license somehow gel together?
yeah,
One of the things that Mr. Hart talked about was he had gotten feedback from potential vendors about it being too expensive to come out here, perhaps just for a day or whatever. And so, again, and that'll be, I guess, a future discussion when we go over the fee schedule stuff, perhaps at a future meeting, is what the cost of those licenses are going to be. But certainly there's nothing set in stone about the number of days. It was just something that we as staff picked out, at least as a starting point.
Could you have it consecutive days?
yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
2, yeah, 2
Yeah.
consecutive days, yeah. Good point. That's what I was thinking of.
That would be easier.
And with that too, you mentioned 4 times a year. I think that's later on it gets talked about. It doesn't say it here.
Temporary license is a maximum of 4 temporary licenses per calendar year.
Yeah. But if it was like thinking about the fees and how it gels with the other ones, or the annual, and then even comparing to other temporary 1-day type licenses, and, maybe it's twice, 2 of them, and that way, if you go to 3 2-day events, then it's like, well, maybe you just need an annual license then, but that's part of the fee discussion and how that all works together. So.
Sure. Yeah, certainly something to think about. As I said, this is a starting point, and we're not actually going to know how it's going to work out till we implement it, and might need some tweaking in the future. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying certainly makes a lot of sense. If someone's here for a weekend, should they just have one license for the weekend, perhaps? The bottom of this page, we talked about exemptions, and as you may recall in our existing ordinance, we talk about how this transient merchant license excludes certain entities or places. So we always had in our ordinance that if an event was being held at the Hutchinson Event Center, McLeod County Fairgrounds, Chamber of Commerce, or Hutchinson Mall, you didn't need to get a transient merchant license. And as we were studying this proposed ordinance, we felt that, you know, 3 of those entities, the Hutchinson Event Center, McLeod County Fairgrounds, and the Hutchinson Mall, are all pretty much geared for attracting multi-vendor events. And so that exemption should stay in there. What we wrestled with was the Hutchinson Chamber of Commerce. They do have one multi-vendor event a year, that's the Arts and Crafts Festival. So we felt that in consideration of that, that perhaps that exemption should no longer apply to them. So that's something perhaps you want to discuss, think about, or maybe you think it's great the way it's being proposed to be changed, or maybe you don't want that change at all.
Thing I guess I thought of, and I don't think it's in here, but got mentioned when we had the discussion before, was the community festivals, which this is one. River Song would be another example. Airy Days, I guess. Obviously the Water Carnival. Should they be tied, you know, that community festival be listed as a exemption? That's what we still want to continue. It's what we've been doing, I guess.
Yeah, and there's a couple things to think about. You could include it. My concern, and do we need to then define that?
Yeah.
What's considered to be a community festival, and/or you address it in the fee schedule, where you potentially exempt costs for
Yeah, there you go.
for the fees for community festivals, which still allows them to put the application together so we kind of know what's all taking place, but you're maybe not charging them a fee, we're just collecting that data, so that was my initial thought. We can easily include it if it's something you want to, or we would address it in the fee schedule.
Could think about waiving the fees would be an option too, like you said. So.
In this section, it uses the phrase "nor to newsboys." When's the last time Hutchinson had newsboys?
It's been a long time.
A long time.
That could be out of there.
One other possible one would be, you know, we have, and I've seen this in other communities, I don't know, well, vegetable stands, you know, the sweet corn stands. Right now, it looks like they are supposed to have a license, and but I've seen other ones where they'll just point out farm to.
Well, let me, see, this is where, now we're start talking about government and complications. You know, this is where a lot of times we get complaints from staff about, well, why don't they have a license? State law exempts, if that corn is from your own farm, we're prohibited as a city for requiring a license. But if it's not from their own, if they're selling someone else's, then they have to get a license.
Right, so you may remember for a number of years in the old Runnings parking lot, there was a produce stand there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was that person's business. He didn't grow those products. So we required him to get a transient merchant license all those years. But Matt's exactly right. In fact, I think it's actually in the Minnesota Constitution that says that products of a person's farm or garden cannot be licensed.
And there's also exemptions for grocery stores and extensions of their business. And so that's where some of these get to be a little complicated in that the state statute might call out specific businesses or occurrences and others that they don't. And so somebody might say, well, we're getting a raw deal. Well, that's based off of a statute.
So your firecracker stand is licensed then?
Correct.
Yep. Okay, and then the next change to this ordinance is in this section 111.7B, to try to address, at least on the transient merchant side, the ability for Matt as the city administrator to just administratively issue these temporary licenses and whatever they end up being, if they end up being 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. But again, to try to address the concerns that were brought up at the last council meeting about perhaps speeding up the process in some cases. So that would be a chance to do that.
But yet the annual license would still have to come to us. I guess I shared it with Matt, is why not have more? Maybe there's certain license that state law says have to come to us. I don't know, the liquor license or whatever, maybe, but no, I'm okay with staff approving them, considering, you know, the requirements that are laid out, and if there's an appeal, they get turned down, then the individual could come to the city council for that.
And we're fine, I think staff is fine with that. This dates back to, and some of you may recall, previous councils not wanting that. You know, there's actually a policy out there, and that's something that we talked about updating, that specifically states these licenses are coming to the council for approval. I think at one time or another, there was potentially a council member or two who wanted to know when those, and so they had required that that be coming from the council. I think the only thing that really needs council approval are liquor licenses.
Right.
I mean, so I think from a staff's perspective, we're comfortable with doing most of these administratively. I know you talked about, you know, maybe just once a month, give you guys an update on what was administrative. We don't have a huge concern with that. It's just trying to figure out what's the desire of council, because previous councils at one time or another wanted to see these permits in front of them.
Well, with your, you know, to streamline it, you give us your weekly update, so, I mean, you could just throw it in when you do your weekly update.
Probably just be
You know.
easier to do a monthly update.
Or monthly, whatever, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Because most of these get put on the consent agenda and are approved. Like I said, I would agree, something that would, for whatever reason, get rejected by staff, I think that's where the appropriate hearing would probably be in front of the council. It's just what's the desire of the council, really.
Oh, and I think that's pretty much it for the ordinance. There's some additional language at the end that talked about if the license application was being denied, and then referring that or tying that denial process into the public hearing that a person, not public hearing, the review hearing that a person could get if their license was denied or revoked. So it's just some additional language on that. So any other questions on this transient merchant license?
And I think just for proper logistics, to be fair to the process, we could go back and make some of these adjustments. I mean, unless you want to consider a first reading with recommended changes to we really didn't present that, and so that would be, I guess, my preference is that we go back, we make those changes, we bring it back a first reading. So,
Let's do a first reading, 2 weeks.
Yeah, that would actually be my recommendation, is that you'd be tabling this tonight, bring it back for a first reading, so we can make some of these changes and make sure they're acceptable to you.
You have a motion on
I
the
agree
table?
with that. I'll make a motion for that, to table it and bring it back.
Second then.
Motion by Mary, second by Steve to table it. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
And we have another one for you, huh?
We do have another one.
Okay, ordinance number 19-807, ordinance revising chapter 123, food vendors.
Okay, and some of this is going to end up being a repeat of the last ordinance you considered, so I'll try to be a little bit more brief. But you recall we had the discussion again about food carts, food trucks, food vendors, and again, being more flexible in the licenses that we give with regard to those. One thing that we had always struggled with as a staff over the past few years is what if a food vendor doesn't fit into this classification of a food cart or food truck? In other words, if the food vendor had a setup that didn't have wheels on it, it didn't fall under this ordinance, it had to be in the transient merchant ordinance, and we just found that that led to a lot of confusion. So we tried to set up a process under this food vendor ordinance that would perhaps address that. So we added a definition of this temporary food stand that would try to address that. So for example, if someone just setting something up on a table or has a stand that isn't movable, it would then fall under this ordinance.
Can I ask something? 21 days in the same location, so they could back it up and move somewhere else and have another 21 days? And how does that compare to an annual license then, I guess?
Well, they would still have to get the annual license or the temporary license. It just is a definition of what the temporary food stand is.
Okay, I got you.
And that 21 days is actually defined by state statute as well.
And the reason why that we put that in there was to differentiate it from concession stands at the high school or at VMF or whatever, that those would not fall into this ordinance.
And just so the councils understand, those concession stands still have state licenses that they have to obtain. So this is where some of the confusion comes in. Right now, most food licenses are issued by the state. We require 2, 3 to have a city license. You have a food cart, food truck, and or temporary food stand, which actually fell under the transient merchant license before. And so, you know, that's been some of the comments we've heard in the past, even for, I think on Gary, but when you have your thing in the park, you have to you get a state license
State license.
to do that. There's no city requirement to do that. You know, I'm a part of one of the sports organizations, and we have tournaments where we sell food. We get a state license to do that, but there's no city requirement. There's really only 3 occurrences where a city license is required for food, and those are the 3 that we've listed in the.
Just to clarify then, that 21 days, that does not have to be consecutive then?
Correct.
Okay.
So then the types of licenses, basically the same as the transient merchant license that was added to that ordinance. So you're going to be able to apply for the annual license, the temporary license, and then the multi-vendor license. And I didn't mention it when we talked about the transient merchant license, but it had the same language in that. So if a person wants to have this multi-vendor event, it doesn't just have to be food vendors or just transient merchant license. We tried to make a combination of the 2, so they were able to apply for that, just one single license rather than nicking them twice. One of the things that Gary talked about at the last meeting that we had was how could we possibly change the insurance requirements to make it a little bit easier on applicants. So we changed the ordinance to talk about the fact that you're only going to need that insurance if you're operating on public property. So hopefully that will take care of some of the questions that people might have. This last section, or the last section on this page anyway, talking about issuance of the licenses and investigation, that's basically just cut and paste from the existing transient merchant license to make it consistent with that. That talks about the fact that applicants have to fill out an application and there's going to be investigation done by Hutchinson Police Services before a license can be issued.
Mark, I mean, just to touch on that, I think that's important to note. We're issuing a license where there's going to be an investigation, and so, you know, how loose does the council want us to be with that? If somebody comes in and wants a license the next day, or that day, that is somehow the basis of how we're gonna do our investigative search, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but you can do a quick little background, it might take you 5 minutes, but it might not be a thorough.
Correct, yeah, we do subscribe to a service where we have access to a plethora of public records that we could do, and would take a matter of probably 10 to 15 minutes. However, you find something on that public record, you're gonna wanna do something a little bit more in depth, which is then, could be days.
So we haven't put anything in here, right, Mark? That says, you're gonna get the license that same day or
And,
within 2 days.
yeah, and I purposely did that. I know there was the discussion at the last meeting that talked about, hey, someone coming in on Friday afternoon and they want the license for the weekend. If something comes up as a result of that investigation, I guess I would like to have us make sure we're looking into that.
Sure.
The license shouldn't just be a slam dunk guaranteed thing. If it was, we wouldn't bother having an ordinance about it.
Well, why pass any for jail? Yeah. I was gonna say any licenses, why not have a week but maybe that's too long, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think most licenses maybe take a couple days unless it's probably liquor, which usually is, I think, a little bit more detailed, but.
We do like 24 or 48 hours or something, just to give a little time. Or
Or up to.
I mean, we don't necessarily need to put anything in the ordinance. I mean, that's just a conversation we're gonna have with somebody who comes in to apply. Is, okay, here's the application, there's an investigation, and that might take,
Right.
might take a day or 2 hours, so.
I would really want to resist putting some kind of a time limit either way, that we're either gonna issue it by or that we have to wait at least by, because, it's really gonna be dependent on the police investigation. We rely on them the way it is, even when these licenses are applied by you as the council. We rely on what their investigation shows. They come in and give us the report. And if they're able to get that investigation done thoroughly in a day or two, great. Matt will sign the license. If it
Maybe
takes
some
longer
other
than that, that's just-
conversations have to take place, right?
Well, realistically, if you're gonna have some kind of doings, I mean, you're gonna be out a couple weeks planning, I would think, at least.
You would hope you'd be surprised.
Well, no, I mean, for somebody to come in that they're gonna have, some food trucks coming in or something, I would say they'd be planning a couple weeks out, I would hope.
It's just kind of those independent ones.
Right,
sometimes.
right.
Hey, I'm going through town. That's pretty rough.
Those are probably the ones you wanna watch out for, but I mean.
Chances are it's gonna be
Yeah.
much more quick than it is now, considering our timetable of getting something in the packet. It has to be in by the Thursday before the council meeting. It will end up being faster again.
It just might not be within an hour. Just so I think everyone's clear with that as we look at revisions to this ordinance.
It's gonna definitely be faster than it is now.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what we're aiming for, so.
And that's what's nice, by letting staff approve all the licenses. Everybody has that opportunity too, so.
Yeah, and then again, the end of the ordinance is just the continuation of this licensing application, and gives an opportunity to have a hearing if the license ends up getting denied either by the council or by Matt. Well, actually, it sounded like Matt's gonna be the initial issuer of the licenses anyway, but we can amend that language to talk about that as well. So are there any questions about this food vendor license?
Guess the one thing for the council, and we said bring it back in 2 weeks, but again, how many maximum events, would it we like to see. If it's a 2-day license, right now our annual license is $125, which is typical for other annual licenses that we have for that type of thing. But, if you had a 2-day license, if it was $45, that'd be $90 for 2 of them. If then you wanted a 3rd weekend, you might as well get the annual license. And so I guess in the $45, or short-term gambling's $30, a dance permit's $55. There's shows or exhibitions, that's $100. It's considered a short-term thing, so. I guess when I was looking at it, the numbers to have a fee that's somewhat in the ballpark with these other short-term things that we have, but then also recognizes, we do have this annual permit too. We're not trying to make it easy to get around that. So.
Well, for the short term, you're kind of thinking 2 consecutive days would be the short term. And, even, like I would say a $30 fee for the short term. Saying that, it's hard to attract people out, to come out when they gotta drive out, and then, I don't want the fee to be so much that it deters people from coming out here too, so.
So then that way you could get 4 short-term licenses in a year before the annual permit was, more cost-effective.
Mm-hmm.
I like the sound of that.
I'm good with that.
And that helps us with drafting both the license and, or not the license, but the ordinance, and then we're gonna have to update the fee schedule as well, so.
And does it make sense to look at some of our other fees too? And, some of these short-term things.
Sure.
It's the other, if we make it cheaper than some of the other ones, it's a fairness issue, then kind of the same amount of work. When we do issue fees, we're trying to capture some of our work time, right?
Yeah.
So is $30 reasonable for that? And that
I
was
think
the
so,
other part.
when you consider that.
Well, that
Unless it turns into.
depends on how big the investigation is, right?
So,
Yeah, personally, I think $30 is reasonable for probably 95% of them. And for that other 5%.
It's the cost of doing business. You don't make money every time.
Well, and,
Right?
and there's been conversations on this, really when we're establishing fees, the intent is to cover our expenses. They're not meant to be
Making money.
making money. I mean, that's, the legislature has been specific on some of that, is that these should be set in a way that it's covering the expense of the city.
well, that would be equal to the short-term gambling, and again, maybe it's worth looking at some of the other ones then too.
So I think I have a pretty good handle on what the council wants us to do. I do have one remaining question I want clarified, and that's what Stevie, you had mentioned about the community festivals and how you wanted that addressed in these ordinances, if at all, or if we're just gonna continue with what we've been doing.
So can you remind me if they typically ask that we waive fees?
No, it's
They
been the
come in
practice.
applications?
It's been the practice that for community festivals, and this is where it's not necessarily noted, that we don't charge them anything. And so I think either, in my mind, maybe the best thing is to include that in the exemptions, but then I almost think we need to identify what's considered a community festival.
Well, Mark, didn't we have that discussion once before on some signage and actually list? I was thinking there is looking at some things. Melissa, do you remember that?
It may be in the liquor regulations.
But, yeah.
We talked about, the liquor we talked about, what's that word, what's?
Yeah, there's community,
Social gatherings was what we've identified as essentially any place, you know, so.
which was the state law that we used to be able to allow alcohol for the arts and crafts.
You know, so when we talk about community festivals right now, well, what essentially gets exempt is Arts and Crafts Festival, River Song, and Water Carnival. Correct.
Yeah.
What we consider right now as community festivals that have exemptions are Water Carnival, Arts and Crafts, and River Song. I think those are the only three right now that are exempt from having to get any permits.
And other things at the fairgrounds, they're.
Yeah,
they
fairgrounds
are
is our,
included in here.
yeah, fairgrounds is already included in that. So in my mind, if we want to include the community festivals in the exemptions, then we just add a definition of what those are that could always be added to in the future by future councils if they wanted to or not.
It makes it clean.
Yeah, too.
It,
For now.
it does make it clean until someone else wants theirs exempt as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, when Main Street wants their event exempt because it's a community festival, you have to be able to tell them no, right?
Yeah, that's
the sticky.
that's the challenge when you define the community festival. What does it say? Where does it not?
We don't define it. Just say they can do it at a community festival.
So, I mean, that's the challenge, you know, and there is some benefit in defining it, but then you do run that risk of who wants to reconsider it.
Well, they could do that now.
Yeah, and you're exactly right.
And maybe for the time being, we don't do anything since festival season is 7 months away now. You know, we get this, we won't forget about it. But at least perhaps get this off the ground for time being.
I don't have a problem with us identifying those three.
But we're doing it already.
Exactly.
So- And you've had questions, well, what about, well,
Yeah.
here, it says right here, this is why.
You have a motion?
No, because we're gonna make some updates
Okay.
to that.
So we'll table this one too?
Yeah, table this one as well. So.
Alrighty.
I'll make a motion to table it.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to table it. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Alrighty, thanks, Mark. Ordinance number 19-808, ordinance revising chapter 93, animals pertaining to chickens.
Mayor and council, we've obviously had a couple different conversations over, well, actually dating back to April regarding our animal ordinance in particular, whether or not there's a desire to allow chickens within the city limits. As we all know, currently those are currently not allowed unless you're in the egg district, of which no egg districts currently exist within city limits. So we've had a couple different discussions. There's been some, I guess, follow-up and research done. At the last meeting, we had, I guess you can call it an informal poll of the council members, and really, when it comes down to logistics, you should act on an ordinance with, I think, the work that we've had, the discussion that we've had. You've directed staff to draft an ordinance, of which we've done, and so the proper thing would be to act on that. And if it's the desire of the council to not move forward with chickens, and then there should be a motion to obviously deny that ordinance. But I think when you're talking about the legislative process, that there should be some sort of action by the council on this. And so what's been presented to you for consideration, I guess, was the last draft of an ordinance that staff put together based off of the feedback of the council. So that's in front of you tonight for consideration.
Well, since I was the one that started it off last time and brought it up, over the last couple weeks, I think I have fielded about 20 calls about not having chickens in town. So I guess out of all the calls I've had, I have not had any to say that they wanted chickens in town. And I was fortunate enough to go out to runnings again, and same thing happened. John comes sprinting across the store and said, "Gary, please don't have chickens in town." So I guess I would be one that says that I do not want them in town.
I concur with you on that. I have had numerous phone calls, letters. People stop, talk to me. Not one person has said, "Please let me have chickens in town." So I would deny this.
I've had a lot more negative feedback in the last 2 weeks also. So Mary, did you make a motion there, or?
I'll make a motion to deny the ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Steve to deny.
I did want to get a chance to say anything. Yeah, again, I like the ordinance. To be honest, I was a little torn just because, you know, we asked staff to check with other communities and they really haven't seen issues with them. However, at the same time, I probably had 12 calls or emails, people stopping me cold, all against. I haven't had one person ask to have it. So I don't see there's a big outcry, you know, to do that. We are surrounded by farm country. There's lots of opportunities for farm fresh eggs, people to see, you know, chickens and other farm animals. And county fair is another great opportunity right there. So again, I just don't see the need to do it. And I thought the one email the council received from a gentleman that lives next to chickens, you know, just put it a little bit in perspective where, you know, you're almost pitting the neighbors against themselves, and they didn't like, you know, being put in that position because they like their neighbor, but there's still issues. There's smells, there's sound, and see increase in other varmints that come around, and so again, I think by denying it, keeping it the way it is, it seems like makes the most sense to me.
Well, I'm going to go completely the other direction. Yes, I've had the negative calls and letters and whatever else that may go along with that, but I've had far more positive comments about chickens. In fact, there's a lady that approached me on Sunday after church, and she said, "We lived in Hutchinson for the last 27 years, and one of the things that we were told when we moved to Hutchinson, it was a friendly town, it was a good place to raise your kids." And so she thought, well, farming community, well, by golly, she was going to have chickens. Well, guess what? She's still waiting after 27 years to have chickens. But the thing of it is, you know, the ordinance is good. I think the ordinance is self-policing. I think you hit the nail on the head, Steve, is the fact that it kind of pits a neighbor against a neighbor. I don't like that situation, but again, like the guy out that had the letter that said he lives next to chickens, he wants to be a good neighbor, so he doesn't complain about it. There is some of that in there, and sometimes you can't be a good neighbor. If you disagree with the chickens and that you got a person on each side and one in the back of you and one says no, you know, you have to respect that person's decision to say no. Like I say, I think that the ordinance itself is self-governing by all means, just by the fact of the way it's written. So I just think it's a common sense type thing. I don't like the idea of pitting neighbors against neighbors, but I think you have to be honest with your neighbors too. If their kids are noisy or the dogs are noisy, you know, you gotta say something about that. Or if they don't pick up after their dogs, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So you have it all directions, there's no getting around that. But I think typically, I'm for it, I'll stay for it, and that's, that will roll call vote.
Okay. All right, any other discussion?
Sounds that way.
Call a motion, all in favor?
It's motion to deny, just so you guys are.
Aye. Deny?
I thought we had Harry there for a second.
So, did you hear?
No.
Did you hear?
No, I didn't. Motion to deny.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
No.
All right, roll call.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye. Alrighty, moving on. Governance, we have tall grass, noxious weed monthly report for July 2019. Hutchinson Housing and Redevelopment Authority annual board meeting minutes from August 21st, 2018. Hutchinson Housing and Development Authority board minutes from July 16th, 2019. Public Library Board minutes from June 24th, 2019. Planning Commission minutes from July 16th, 2019. Chief Gifferson, you have anything else?
I have nothing tonight, sir.
Kent?
Yeah, just a couple items on the project front. Fifth Avenue's going well, a little ahead of schedule. The gravel grade on the east end has been achieved. We'll get things opened up to school buses and such going into next week, so all good. Paving more than likely will happen on that end come next week sometime. So things are going well over there. South Grade Road is underway. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of days out there, but things will get better with respect to our businesses there on the east end. So I just want to encourage the two businesses of note, Rano Chiropractic Clinic and Anytime Fitness. You know, their access will be off of South Grade Road. It's specified in our special provisions of our contract that the contractor has to stage his work in a manner that allows for access throughout construction. So we did not prescribe a very detailed phasing plan. We're really leaving this one in the hands of the contractor to do so, and we'll be monitoring accordingly and hopefully ensuring for the most part that doesn't occur. So to get to those two businesses, come from the west. You can try to come down Merrill or just come from Dale and drive the entire length all the way down to Merrill. You cannot enter off of Highway 15. We want to maintain as much of a hard closure as possible, albeit the contractor will be sending trucks out that direction, so you gotta put a crack in the barricades to allow for that, which allows people then to migrate into that area. But we want to try to discourage that as much as possible.
So you can't access off of Cashway's parking lot either then, is that what you're saying?
No, that's a hard closure also.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we're
Question
keeping
that I've been
buttoned up.
Okay, the question I've been asked is how long? I think it was stated at one time about approximately how long it was gonna take, but.
Well, our completion date within our contract is Friday, November 1st.
Okay, it is November 1st, all right.
Be open to traffic at some point before that. That is the final completion date. I guess the good thing is the contractor, every indication, he has a window in his schedule. That he's going to put a lot of resources at this, and hopefully it's done sooner than later. And every indication in the first 2 days that should be the case.
Is the crosswalk open, like in front of the dental place across to Taco Bell? Is that open?
Yeah. Yes, I think I gotta remember exactly where the barricades are, Chad, but I would think even if the barricades are out, they might be just creeping out into the actual painted crosswalk a little bit, but you could still find room to cross on the, I guess, the east side of the barricades there.
I saw some people cross, some runners and a dog with 2 or 3 of them kind of through that area, so.
Yeah, you can cross. I mean, the barricades are up on the concrete that's gonna remain. You're right on the edge of it. So, I mean, there's room to cross from a pedestrian standpoint.
So you mentioned, though, the access to any time in Rano's, they took out quite a bit of dirt, didn't they already? So, I mean, they can't go driving up there right now, or?
Well, they're doing the storm sewer work right now, and that's really the critical, utility. There's no water main work or significant water main work. We're addressing a few valves and a few hydrants here and there. No deep sanitary sewer. So we anticipate them being done with that storm sewer work basically between the highway and Merrill, and hopefully the Merrill Street intersection by the end of the week here. And once that's done, we'll be in a better position to get people in and out of there to those 2 businesses. This is really the biggest impact they're gonna see. I mean, it's problematic right now, there's no disputing that, but hopefully things will get better once the pipe work's done in that area next week.
So would that be the same for the west entrance into the mall? Right now, that's been closed off, so people really have to come in from either main entrance to the mall or over on Century Avenue.
Yes.
To get there. Do you see the west entrance opening up soon?
The west, you're referring
By the
car wash? Yeah, more discouraging. That's private property. We're back to that issue. So we're not encouraging traffic, how we've set up. You can get there and it's ramped and, there's other, I'm not saying it's not available 100% of the time, but we didn't necessarily want to sign or encourage traffic to utilize that. Yeah.
Well, then that leads to a question I was going to bring up, was related to this. So right now, people have to go in that main entrance off of 15 or through Century Avenue by Runnings, and there's been some pothole filling that's been done, but there's still some pretty good ones.
Yeah.
So is there a way to, we're basically forcing people to use that for our project. So is there a way that we can fill some of those holes, not overlay or anything like that, just fill some potholes to make it a little easier? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think there's a way. Obviously, it's private property, and we can get into. Obviously, there were some emails exchanged earlier today on that front. But I would there's one. We can do it. We could do it potentially with city staff. Contractor availability, I don't think is an option. Honestly, we have those struggles. Get our frost boils addressed. It's the thing I think we'd struggle with is where do we begin and where do we end up there? Just looking at it. Yeah, you could do some Band-Aids and fill one here and there, but Yeah, it's a slippery slope in my mind with it being private property and the scope, the overall scope of the issue up in that area. I hear what you're saying, Steve, but I would be hesitant, but leave it at council.
I think if you come in off of Century, and I'm just gonna put my 2 cents in here, if you go toward McDonald's and go all the way north along that where the new building is being built, you come to the 4-way stop, and then you can go through right over to the next 4-way stop. You know, typically, it's the smoothest route I know of right now.
Well, there's the Holiday Road too, you know, there's another access point on 15
But
too.
why cut through the mall to get over to Cashwise when you can actually go around that, so. And then you have right by, can't think of the name of the gas station, but Holiday right there coming from
Yeah,
the north.
exactly,
You can
there's
cut across
Holiday
there.
access point.
That's where I would
And
go.
that's a good access there, so.
Yeah, and that's fine going in if you go on 15 and then want to go in and cut by Holiday, but then what if you want to go north?
You go down to the thing and make a
And
U-turn and come back.
you turn and go
north.
back, right?
I understand.
I just think it's really tough, you know, for us to go onto private property and start filling holes and,
Well, we'd have to,
and where do we stop? I mean, you'd have to
Yeah.
just do the whole parking lot.
no,
You're opening up a can of
Yeah.
worms.
Yes.
And the other thing is, they would have to approve of that.
yeah.
You know, obviously, you know, it's private property, or there would have to be some sort of arrangement or understanding, but, yeah.
As long as we're talking detours here, is there a way to put the stop sign back up by the fairgrounds?
Yes.
To make that a 4-way
Four-way?
stop, like it was during the fair?
Oh, I
Right by
suppose,
the
due to
theater?
the extent
Right
of
by the theater?
traffic. Yeah, with Southbury Road,
No, just during construction.
during
'cause-
Southbury Road here.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is our
because-
sign detour.
can we put a 4-way
Is
stop
the,
there?
well, is the 4-way stop due to the traffic on the secondary streets, or is it due just to slow down traffic, I guess, from your perspective?
you know,
I just raised that question because if you're utilizing it to slow down traffic, and Chief Gifferson could probably speak to this too, you know, that's not what you should be utilizing stop signs
No,
for, but,
just because of the
yeah.
the backup of traffic.
On
where?
On Sunset in the fairgrounds?
Yeah, because my son lives up there, of course, and he comes and says, hey, when you got council meeting, then can you ask if they can put the stop sign back up there? Because there's a lot of truck traffic. He said it was like 7 deep, and with the cars going up and down Century, he said he hardly could get out onto the road.
Off of Sunset there?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I understand, but on the other hand, it's not for, you know, the 4-way stop's for the fair use, and if you're doing it for Sunset, why aren't you doing it for other streets up and down that corridor?
Well, it'd be Sunset and Century. It'd be.
Yeah,
Right.
Sunset's
It-
obviously stopped.
It's stopped already, but,
Yeah.
you know.
No, we
Century-
can certainly do it.
Well, just look at it.
Yeah.
maybe. You know, Chief Gifferson, you probably could take a look at it too and
Yeah.
see if it warrants to have a stop. And the other
I'm trying to think.
thing is,
I think the one thing just before where it might be viable, just due to the fact there aren't many other side streets, secondary streets along that corridor in total. I think, I'd hate to do it for one and then, you know, you're not doing it for others, you know, kind of thing.
I think that's fine.
That's,
It's pretty minimal, if any, because you got the townhomes while you're coming from Ryan's, and you got the large frontage of the townhomes there, to
But the-
basically get the
you know,
sunset.
but
And then you get into the Century and then Oaks and the Pines and.
the increased amount of traffic that flows up and down that road.
Excuse me.
Behind Walmart.
Yeah, Market.
Market,
Yeah.
yeah.
No.
'Cause
Yeah,
he-
we could.
yeah.
We could
Because even,
discuss it and I'll take
yeah,
a look.
the other one he asked for is have a dead end sign on Sunset Connecticut because people are trying to figure out how to get around up there. So he said they all come up and they hit the cul-de-sac, then they turn around and come back out.
Sightseers.
Well, I'm sure it's just people trying to find a way to get around, you know, and I know.
I just caution, we got.
Yeah, I know.
You can't sign every
No.
road, you know, around it. But I want to get back to Steve's point. I mean, that's going to be a council decision, if that's something that wants to be done. So, because as noted, that was private property.
I know it's unusual, but it's an unusual situation too. You mentioned that north loop, I've gone on that a couple times and it's still not very good. Especially, I've gone south, so there's some good ones and obviously Lebanon too.
Well, it just seems like that's the easiest access in and out if you're going to go over the center.
Just thought I'd bring them.
Anything else, Ken?
PDK Uper roadway off of Highway 7, paving this week, working with, between Miles and myself, working with the TDK and Uper representatives with respect to the reinstallation of their signage. So, sounds like there's gonna be 2 signs now that exist within that footprint of, the franchise agreement you approved, a few months ago. So, no big deal, but, they're getting that sorted out between themselves. Yeah, resource allocation, I don't believe we'll have a meeting in September here. It's the Tuesday after Labor Day. A few things I think we should address can wait until October. So just for yourself, Gary and Chad. And lastly, probably most importantly, just want to bring council up to speed on something that's been arrived at on the Highway 15 project. And it's kind of a big decision, and it's been in the works here just in the last few days, and MnDOT's arrived at it is the letting date was originally established long ago, and it's been in November of 19 here, just a couple of months or so from right now. Due to some technicalities in the design, we talked about the contaminated soils and contaminated water issue that was really arrived at late in the design process here. And then some other dynamics, sorting out some ADA design issues and what that means to the overall profile of the project. And the MnDOT is elected at this point in combination with their consultant, their design consultant, to extend the letting out to February 28th. They do all their letting, yep, and it's been a long discussion, and trust me, I'm not overly pleased with that decision. I've noted my input. Ideally, I would like to have seen them do the letting at the end of January. I think it's a very important month there that they're giving out between January and February, because February 28th, between February 28th and May 1st, there's not a whole lot of time. There's 2 months to do their award process, get the contractor on board. We have to do some things from an assessment standpoint in that period of time also. And yeah, so this is the decision that's been made. I've expressed my concerns in writing, and they're confident they can, even with that letting date in late February, they can get everything turned around, and if there's good weather come late April, early May, the contractor will have the opportunity to start construction. So
Isn't it supposed to be November?
yeah, November, last Friday in November. No, it was November 19th, because the last Friday is Thanksgiving, I think.
So why
Black
couldn't they
Friday,
push
yeah.
it? Why extend it that much longer?
Well, that's what I question, Steve, and that's my concern. I could see the need, and we knew there was a need to address the letting date once this contamination issue started to evolve, 2 months ago.
how does that influence? I mean, from a contractor standpoint, why does that?
It's from a design standpoint, and a
All right.
specification, and really getting a handle on what are you gonna prescribe as expectations of of the contractor to address that. It's a big issue, and we realized there was gonna have to be a need long ago to extend the letting date, but I didn't think it would go from November to February. And like I said, I saw 2 months as being fine, but that extra month, but ultimately it's MnDOT's project. They're administering it, and they're directing their design consultant, and there's not much we can do about it. I've expressed my concerns, and they've acknowledged that. It is what it is.
All right.
And that's the brutal truth.
Thanks, Ken.
And then lastly, just quickly, excuse me, I know Gary, last one was supposed to be last, but Mr. Morrow's concerns, and, you know, I just want to speak on behalf of city staff a little bit. And, you know, I believe we do a great job, Mr. Olson, our street department, our contractors that help us out on the street maintenance side of things. And honestly, I don't, with the resources we have, yeah, you can always dedicate more funding, you know, okay? But the checkbook, you know, there's only so many checks in the checkbook, and we gotta respect that. And I think that's what some people don't understand, but what the resources and the funding that are allocated within our budget and the projects and bonding and such, I believe we do a great job delivering projects that, you know, address the roadways that need to be addressed when they need to be addressed. And from a maintenance standpoint, John is always looking for a new technique or a more cost-effective approach and technique. We were just talking about it earlier today from a patching standpoint and the struggles we had this year, and maybe how we do things a little differently with our staff and our equipment going forward. You know, we kind of years ago moved away from city staff doing a whole lot of patching and going to contractors, because during the recession period, give or take, these bituminous contractors were looking for work. You know, now they have all sorts of project work. They're not interested in doing these smaller patchy jobs for cities and counties. And that's going to be the trend going forward. There's going to be this glut of project work where contractors aren't interested. And the small paving contractors, you know, their money isn't in coming to do work for the city, to do patching work. They focus on doing driveways for people, you know, the real small outfits, and we're kind of, your municipal and county patching work is stuck in between the larger contractors and the smaller contractors, and neither one of them, with what's happening in the labor force in that industry, neither one of them want to do that work, and we see that evolving. So I think, fortunately, due to the age of our staff, I think getting younger over the last, you know, 5 years or so, you know, we've had a fair number of retirements and the likes, and I think we're at a point where we can look at our equipment, do what we need to do, and bring some of that patching effort back in-house, where we have, you know, it's nice to have younger guys doing patching too, you know, that's the truth of the matter, so I think we have that in our favor. So I just wanted to, you know, speak my piece on that. You know, we do a lot from a maintenance standpoint. Some streets are left to deteriorate, and that's just the nature of the beast. You can't keep putting Band-Aids on some streets, and that's how we set up our pavement management program. You know, some are left to let go until the project comes, you know, 2, 3, 5 years down the road. But yeah, there's other communities with much worse roads than what we have, and I think we're doing a fine job.
And I did look to verify that Roberts is on the list for 2021, so.
Yeah, it's coming. Roberts, Glendale, yeah.
Very, thanks, Ken.
Yep.
I did notice, as far as staff patching, we're basically doing the parking lot right
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah, that's an excellent example. We're already doing patching to a degree, you know, and we're just, what I just explained is just expanding upon that. But Yeah, you're exactly right, Steve. The last few weeks, we've been out touching up alleys and downtown parking lots, realizing the Main Street project that's coming next year. So we wanted to get them spruced up going into next spring.
Great, thanks, Ken. Mark, you got anything for us?
Nothing else tonight.
Chad, let's go with you tonight.
I have nothing else.
Mary?
I have nothing.
Dave?
I would want to say that a lady come up to me not too long ago and expressed her gracious thanks for getting Dale Street patched up, even though it wasn't all that rough, but she was really tickled pink about that, so that's one good thing. Secondly, I have encountered over the last probably month or so, we got these beautiful trails and we have people running with baby carriages and young people on bicycles riding the curbs. And people running not on the trail, or not on the trails, or whatever the case, you know. I guess I'm not understanding that, but maybe someday it'll come to light why they're not using the trail instead of using the highway, the streets. So I don't know if they have a reason or not, what they...
Oh, okay.
They're using, the Century is one that I drive almost daily, and from Jefferson. And there are people that are running with their baby carriages and this, or walking, and then there's a small child in front of them on a bicycle. You come around that corner from off of Jefferson, and you best be looking right immediately, because there's usually, not often, but it's often enough to make me wonder why they're not over on the trail, which is only 30 feet away, so.
I
And
see
runners
it
going
too.
down, bicycles running the sidewalks instead of being on the trails. You know, they're there for a purpose, and so typically I just encourage you to use them. And there you go. I still like chickens.
Thanks, Dave. Steve?
Just one thing, I was curious what the update on our document
We talked about that.
cabinet.
We just got it yesterday.
Pretty good.
So yeah, now it's finding a way to secure those documents, so we can store them in there. So, yep, we just got it yesterday, so.
I just asked Matt about that previously.
Pretty good.
That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Matt?
A couple reminders, offices closed Monday, September 2nd, obviously for Labor Day. There have been regional meeting notices that have gone out for League of Minnesota Cities, so if you're interested in attending any of those, just kind of let me know and help get you set up. Just another reminder, we are going to have another budget workshop before our next meeting, discuss the preliminary budget in advance of our second meeting in September, where we have to look to adopt a levy and budget, and I'll try to get that out to you as well. And then just lastly too, I'm going to try to schedule a meeting with Mr. Morrow. He had many facts that were not close to being accurate. We never bonded for the pool, and we never spent $1.1 million to move ball fields.
Well, I think that
Well,
as far as putting it in the
yeah.
pond, but I question that too for a second.
And, you know, I've offered to give him both the capital plan and the pavement management plan, which he's never, you know, so when he talks about our conversation, so I'm gonna try to get those into his hands so he can, and encourage, you know, like I said, we have 4 to 5 public meetings where we go into depth on discussion of our budget. And we do that, obviously to educate the council, but to also educate the public on where we're spending our money. There's a reason to do that. You know, we've got documents that are available at City Hall. I'm always willing and able to go out and meet. I've done it before, meet with groups, meet one-on-one with people. I'll gladly walk you through the budget, why we make decisions. And at the end of the day, some of this is policy stuff for the 5 people that get elected into office. And so I just want to encourage people. I'd gladly meet with you and walk you through that process of how we've established stuff and what's on our 5-year plan and how those decisions get made. So that's it.
Are you closed on coming up here?
On Monday.
On Monday.
I said that, yes. I'm glad you're listening to me, Gary, so.
Must be this barrier. But we talked about it before, you know, talked about staff, and Matt issuing some license and stuff, and I guess, which ones would you like to see them take care of? Like
Well,
the-
I mean, I guess to address that, there was actually a policy adopted by the council that listed which ones were gonna come to the council and which ones would be done administratively. And so Melissa and I have talked about bringing that back to the council to get a better idea on what you're looking for.
Alrighty, otherwise, got everything else covered before I could even bring it up, so I guess, everybody have a safe, Labor Day. And remember, school's in session, following Monday, or Tuesday, I should say. So, watch out for the little chitlins out running around, because they'll be excited to get on the bus. So, watch the traffic. So, that's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, carried.
Thank you.